Have you ever wondered why there are women who seem to make no effort to compete, who do not chase after anything and yet still become the center of love, of opportunity, of admiration? While many tirelessly pursue happiness until they are exhausted, somewhere out there are women who simply sit still and life finds its way to them. This paradox may sound unbelievable, but Carl Jung had already perceived it. When you stop craving possession, when you stop straining to control, you become whole. And it is precisely that wholeness that makes everything want to return to you. Like a candle that does not rush to invite anyone, yet its light naturally attracts those lost in the dark. The answer lies not in tricks or techniques, but in transformation from within yourself. In today's video, we will dive into 7 wondrous paradoxes that Carl Jung once unveiled, principles that show precisely when you stop craving, stop chasing love, opportunity, and even the meaning of life will come to you on their own. Because everything wants you when you want nothing. Everything begins to turn toward you the moment you are at peace enough to no longer need to possess them. Are you ready to embark on this paradoxical yet fascinating journey? Number 1, when you let go of the desire to control. Have you ever noticed that the more you try to hold on to something, the easier it slips away? A woman in love often makes this mistake. When her heart stirs, the instinct to control arises. She wants to know where he is, what he is thinking, whether he still loves her. Instead of allowing love to breathe, she tightens her grip, but like holding sand, the tighter the grasp, the faster it slips away. And in the end, what she feared most, loss, becomes reality. We often think that to protect happiness, we must control it. But Jung pointed out that the craving for control is actually the shadow of the ego. It does not come from love, but from fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough, fear of being replaced. When this fear hides in the unconscious, it begins to dictate behavior. The woman thinks she is loving, but in truth she is trying to possess, and love gradually turns into chains. I once knew a successful woman. Her career was stable. Her friends adored her. But in love she was fragile. She loved him so much that she wanted him entirely for herself. She read every message, grew jealous even of the smiles he gave his colleagues. She thought control would bring her peace of mind. But in truth, the more she controlled, the more she lost trust, lost freedom. At first, the man loved her too, but over time he felt suffocated. When he left, she finally understood. What pushed him away was not that she loved too little, but that she wanted too much to control love. Letting go, according to Jung, is not losing. It does not mean abandoning. Letting go is acknowledging that there are things beyond our reach, and instead of straining, we allow them to flow naturally. Like a woman tending a garden, she can sow seeds, water them, but she cannot command flowers to bloom on a certain day. If she worries every minute, all she gains is disappointment. But when she is patient, letting nature do its part, the garden blossoms. There is a truth many women forget. Men are not attracted to someone who always controls, but to a woman who knows how to release. A woman who can smile when he replies late, continue her own life when he is busy, trust without interrogation. In this release, she sends out an invisible message. I am whole. I love, but I do not need control for love to exist. And that very thing makes the man want to stay. When she no longer tries to hold tightly, love naturally returns. This is life's paradox. Everything comes when you stop craving to possess it. Many women enter love with wounds. Having been betrayed, abandoned, these memories become the shadow Jung spoke of. And instead of facing them to heal, they cover them with control. But the shadow cannot be hidden. It reveals itself in every jealous rage, in every pressing question. Only when a woman dares to face it does she learn to release. She realizes control is never the solution. Only trust and the courage to let go lead her to peace. Picture a woman swimming in the sea. If she panics, thrashes, she will soon exhaust herself. But if she relaxes, letting her body float, the water lifts her up. Life is the same. When you release, you are lifted by a current larger than yourself. I have met women who never bother proving their worth. They do not need to control the man who loves them. Instead, they read books, sit in warm cafes, learn new skills, or watch the sunrise. And paradoxically, they are the ones men cannot leave. Their freedom and wholeness become an invisible magnet no one can resist. Carl Jung once said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people." When a woman dares to face her own shadow, her fear of abandonment, her insecurity, her craving for control, she truly liberates herself. And once she is free, she is no longer bound by fear, but lives in freedom. Her love then becomes a gift, not a chain. Letting go, therefore, is not to lose. Letting go is to live. It is courage when a woman knows she does not need to hold everything in order to still be fully present. And precisely in the moment she releases, she becomes more magnetic than ever. The paradox of attraction, silence creates echoes. The paradox of attraction, silence creates echoes. After learning to release the desire for control, a woman enters another state, presence. And from this state, a fascinating paradox appears. The quieter she is, the more she resonates in the hearts of others. In a noisy world where everyone tries to prove themselves more interesting, more outstanding, silence becomes rare and magnetic. A woman does not need to compete, to interject in every conversation, to use too many words to assert herself. It is precisely her quiet confidence that turns heads toward her. Like in a piece of music, sometimes the pause is what makes the melody unforgettable. I once attended a small gathering where many beautiful women dressed to impress chatted lively to stand out. Yet one woman chose to sit quietly, only smiling and listening. She did not try to prove herself intelligent or interesting. She simply was, her eyes gentle, her gestures slow, unhurried to interject. Strangely, when the evening ended, people remembered her most. Some even approached her, drawn to the space she carried. A peace that made them want to stay near. That is the power of silence. It does not boast, but it seeps deeply. Carl Jung explained that when the ego is reconciled with the shadow, one no longer needs to perform. Silence is no longer forced or timid, but the natural outcome of inner wholeness. Such a woman is not silent because she has nothing to say, but because she does not need to say too much to be seen. She already is herself, and that presence is the strongest statement. Jung once wrote, "Solitude is for me a fountain of healing which makes my life worth living." And a woman's silence is just such a fountain of healing, a space that makes others feel safe and want to draw near. I often think of the moon on the night sky. It makes no sound, does not shout for attention. It simply shines quietly, and precisely in its quietness it is gazed upon from everywhere. Women are the same. When they stop trying to prove, their energy becomes pure and naturally resonates. In truth, such silence is not easily achieved. Many women carrying insecurity feel they must speak, prove, do something to secure their place in others' hearts. But the more they try, the less magnetic they become. Conversely, when a woman dares to step back, choosing stillness, she shows she is strong enough not to compete, and that makes her stand out above all. This magnetic silence also comes from listening. A silent woman is not empty, but spacious enough to receive others. A man sitting beside her feels safe because he is heard, seen, understood. And in a rushed world, that is what everyone longs for. A man once shared that what he could not forget about the woman he loved was not her words, but the moments she sat silently beside him. In her silence, he felt peace as if he were home. And precisely when she did not need to do anything to keep him, he felt he wanted to stay more. The truth is this magnetism only arises when the woman truly releases the need for attention. If silence is only a mask for praise, it will be awkward. But when silence comes from a full soul, it becomes a field of energy. Jung called this the state where the ego is reconciled with the shadow. no longer fragmented, no longer conflicted. When you need nothing, you have everything. This paradox reminds us that true attraction lies not in noise, but in stillness. In her silence, a woman sends a powerful message. I do not need to prove because I already am myself, and that message without words compels others to listen. When you let go of the urge to impress, you become most impressive. When you stop filling space with words, that very space becomes an echo. And this is the spirit of the saying, everything wants you when you want nothing. And perhaps you too have experienced such a moment once when you were silent, not trying to prove yet remembered more than anyone else. If you have, share your story in the comments. Who knows? Your silence may inspire someone still chasing after noise in search of echoes. The freedom of no longer needing recognition. Number 3, the freedom of no longer needing recognition. After you recognize the paradoxical power of silence, that sometimes saying nothing echoes more than any words, you begin to see a deeper truth. What makes a woman truly magnetic does not lie in the admiring eyes of others, but in her ability to live freely, no longer needing recognition. The very moment you stop living to please someone, you step out of the invisible shackles that society calls the persona. The mask we wear to be praised, to be accepted. From childhood, most women are taught that their value lies in being recognized by others. A good girl must study well to please her parents, must behave properly to be praised by her teachers, must look beautiful to be noticed by her peers. As they grow, this pressure transforms into expectations from lovers, colleagues, society. And so many women spend their whole lives running after others' eyes until they lose the ability to ask themselves, who am I if I don't have to please anyone? Carl Jung believed that the persona is the social mask necessary for adaptation. But if we identify with it, we drift far from our true self. When a woman lives only for approval, she no longer lives for herself. Every compliment becomes a rope binding her. Every criticism becomes a source of fear. And the paradox is the more she craves recognition, the more she loses her true magnetism. I once knew a woman working in the arts. She was very talented, but for years she only created what the audience wanted to hear, to see. She tried to follow trends, reshape herself to please the masses. Her work was praised. She received applause, yet deep inside she felt empty. The more recognition she gained, the less joy she found in creating. Only after a life-turning crisis, when the praise suddenly disappeared, did she dare to live authentically. She began writing what she wanted to write, painting what she wanted to paint without caring whether anyone applauded. And paradoxically, that was when she truly touched hearts. People felt the authenticity, the freedom in every line of her work. The magnetism no longer came from applause, but from her courage to be real. A bird that sings only to be praised will sound forced. But if it sings because it cannot help but sing, because it is breath instinct, its song resonates and pierces deep. A woman is the same. When she creates lives fully not to be seen, but because it is her nature, her energy becomes the most magnetic. When you live authentically, you no longer need to prove your worth. Others' eyes are only reflections, not measures. You become the center of yourself, and the paradox is when you stop seeking recognition, you receive the deepest recognition. People are drawn to a free soul because they crave the liberation they themselves have not dared to embrace. In many relationships, a woman easily loses herself by focusing too much on pleasing a man. She sacrifices, she strains, she abandons her own joy to gain his approval. But then love becomes fatigue. Conversely, a woman who holds to herself, who does not chase after praise, earns a man's respect and desire to stay, because in her he sees freedom, something he cannot control but cannot leave. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." When a woman lets go of the need for recognition, she grants herself that privilege. She is no longer a mask, no longer a product of others' expectations, but a free being. And that freedom is the root of magnetism in modern society, where everyone chases likes, numbers, and compliments. This freedom is even rarer. A woman who does not need to flaunt her life, who does not prove herself through pictures, who does not seek constant praise, radiates stronger magnetism than any. Her inner peace becomes the luxury the world lacks. This is the paradox Jung wanted us to remember. When you no longer need recognition, you become the most recognized presence. When you stop chasing attention, you make others unable to look away. When you no longer crave to have, you end up having everything. When you stop chasing, everything finds its way to you. Number 4, when you stop chasing, everything finds its way to you. When a woman learns to live without needing recognition, she begins to perceive an even deeper principle. The more you chase something, the further it runs. But when you release, when you stop pursuing, everything naturally finds its way to you. This is life's paradox and one of the hardest truths of the soul's journey. In the Bible, there is a beautiful image, the story of the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve, in their innocence, not yet driven by possession, lived in harmony with the universe. But when the desire for control, the craving to know and have everything arose, symbolized by eating the forbidden fruit, they immediately lost their original freedom. What they chased became the cause of their fall. This is the very principle Jung often emphasized. What is forced resists, but what is free naturally blossoms in relationships. This principle is especially clear. A woman who does not chase, beg, or bind often makes a man feel free. And it is precisely this freedom that makes him want to return to stay long term. In truth, this magnetism comes from an inner space the woman knows how to create. When she is no longer ruled by fear, she allows the man to feel comfortable being himself. With her, he does not need to prove or defend. It is this sense of breathing freely that makes him long to stay. Jung stressed that real love only blooms when it is allowed to be free, not forced. Like a butterfly, if you try to hold it in your hand, it dies. But if you let it fly free, it may circle back, even land on your shoulder of its own accord. Interestingly, this principle applies not only to love, but also to work and opportunity. When you desperately seek a job, you are often rejected. But when you return, do well in even the smallest tasks, and focus on growth rather than chasing, many achievements suddenly appear. Opportunities are like doors. If you pound frantically, they remain closed. But if you take time to sharpen your inner strength, a door will naturally open. Sometimes one you never expected. A young woman in the creative field once shared her story. At first, she desired success so much that she worked day and night, flooding her boss with ideas just to be noticed. But the more she worked, the more drained she became, and her ideas turned forced, lifeless. One day, after collapsing from exhaustion, she decided to stop. Instead of forcing herself, she traveled alone, read books, sat quietly in cafes. Strangely, in those doing nothing days, her best ideas appeared. When she stopped chasing success, success found her. Her project was unexpectedly chosen. And for the first time, she felt creativity was true joy, not a burden. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists." And conversely, what you release often becomes yours in the most natural way. When you stop forcing love, love blossoms. When you stop chasing creativity, creativity flows in. When you stop seeking opportunity, opportunity arises at the exact moment you are ready. This paradox is hard to believe, for everyone thinks to have you must chase. But psychologically, it is the opposite. The more you chase, the further it goes. The more you release, the closer it comes. This does not mean you stop making effort. But that effort should not become desperation, compulsion. You sow seeds. You care for them. But you cannot force them to sprout immediately. When you stop craving to control results, you allow seeds to bloom in their own time. And this is one of Jung's core messages. When you no longer crave possession, you become whole. And that wholeness draws everything to you. Because when you pause, you allow life to come. When you stop making urgent demands, you create a space. And that space becomes an invitation for love, for opportunity, for the missing pieces you need on your journey. Sometimes what you seek is not lost, but waiting for you to be still so it can find its way back. After understanding that love, opportunity, and creativity only truly come when you stop chasing them. In the next part, we will dive deeper into another layer of meaning, the state of non-attachment, where peace no longer comes from adding more, but from the ability to live free and full in this very moment. When you reach the state of non-attachment, peace, that arises from within, there is a threshold that every woman will reach on her inner journey. The moment she no longer lives in I must have, but quietly lives in I am enough. That is the essence of non-attachment, when joy no longer depends on external additions, but arises from within. In this state, happiness does not need to be chased, for it already exists in each breath, each simple moment. In the modern world, women are often caught in the vortex of craving. You must have a better job, a bigger house, the ideal man. These must-haves become burdens, never allowing the heart to rest. But when a woman learns to release, she realizes joy does not lie in what she owns, but in the ability to savor what she already has. Carl Jung once said that the strongest chains binding people do not come from outside, but from the unconscious. It is the unacknowledged cravings, fear of not being enough, fear of being left behind, obsession with proving that become shackles. Jung emphasized, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And when you find the courage to release craving, those chains dissolve. Peace reveals itself. I remember a woman in her 40s whom I once met. She had chased ambition her whole youth, working tirelessly to climb high. She thought happiness would come once she reached a certain milestone. But each rung she climbed left her emptier. But one day, after an unexpected loss, she collapsed under the weight of her own cravings. She could no longer run, no longer prove. And in that pause, something beautiful happened. Sitting quietly in her small kitchen, sipping a cup of tea, watching sunlight fall on the table, she felt a strange peace. For the first time, she was not thinking of what she lacked, but of what she already had. A warm home, a loyal friend, her own breath. That moment changed her life. She realized that peace does not wait at the finish line of ambition, but lives quietly in the present. Non-attachment does not mean you stop striving. It does not mean you abandon dreams. Rather, it means you stop binding your worth to results. You work, you love, you live. But whether success comes or not, whether love stays or not, your heart remains whole. A non-attached woman is not cold nor indifferent. She loves passionately, but does not chain love to her own survival. She works with all her soul, but her joy is not destroyed by failure. Her peace lies in knowing that she is already complete within herself. And this is where magnetism blooms most strongly. People are drawn to such a woman not because she begs for attention, but because she is so deeply at ease that others want to share her calm. In Jung's words, this is the integration of the self, the deepest center of being where all opposites reconcile. When a woman touches this state, she no longer lives split between fear and desire, but unified, radiant, like a lake with still water. She reflects everything around her without distortion. Men, friends, colleagues feel safe near her because her energy does not demand but gives. The paradox here is profound. The less you crave, the more you attract. The less you seek recognition, the more people admire you. The less you demand love, the more deeply you are loved. This is because non-attachment frees you from invisible chains, and people are instinctively drawn to freedom. I recall a story of a man who once confessed about the woman he could never forget. She was not the most beautiful, not the most talented, but she had a peace that no one else had. She never begged for his presence, never chained him with expectations. And strangely, that was why he could never let her go. Her non-attachment did not push him away, but made him want to stay longer, because with her he felt free, and freedom is the rarest gift love can offer. Non-attachment is not indifference. It is love without fear. It is ambition without obsession. It is life without chains. And when a woman steps into this state, she becomes like a tree with deep roots. Storms may shake her branches, but she remains standing. Life may change, but her peace does not break. Jung's wisdom whispers here, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. And a non-attached woman chooses to become whole. This paradox shows us that when you stop clutching at life, life itself embraces you. When you stop begging love to stay, love stays. When you stop needing to be enough, you already are. And in that wholeness, you become a light, drawing everything you once thought you had to chase. Because in truth, nothing is missing. Everything you need is already within you, waiting for you to stop searching long enough to feel it. When you stop resisting pain, it transforms into wisdom. This is perhaps the most difficult paradox for the human soul to embrace, yet it holds the deepest treasures. From childhood, we are taught to run from pain, to avoid discomfort, to push away sadness. But Jung revealed that pain is not the enemy. It is a messenger. And when you stop resisting it, when you dare to sit with it, that very pain becomes the womb of wisdom. A woman often believes she must hide her wounds to be loved, that to be attractive she must be cheerful, flawless, unshaken. But in truth, what makes her magnetic is not her perfection, but her courage to embrace imperfection. When she allows her pain to be felt, to be seen, she becomes real. And it is that reality that touches hearts more deeply than any farce aid ever could. I remember a young woman who had endured betrayal. For months she fought against the pain, telling herself she was fine, forcing smiles, drowning her nights in distractions. But no matter how she resisted, the wound festered inside. Only when she finally allowed herself to cry, to break, to admit, yes, I am hurt, did her healing begin. Through journaling, through therapy, through long walks in silence, she stopped fighting the pain and began listening to it. And slowly she discovered the wisdom within her suffering. She learned what she truly valued, what she could no longer accept, what she needed to grow. The woman who emerged from that storm was not weaker, but wiser, deeper, more radiant than before. Jung often said that the shadow contains not only what we fear, but also what we need to become whole. Pain is the doorway to that shadow. When you push it away, it grows darker. But when you embrace it, it reveals your hidden strength. A woman who has faced loss, heartbreak, failure, and yet dares to integrate that pain carries an aura unlike any other. She does not need to prove resilience. It shines naturally in her presence. People feel it when they are near her, a quiet depth that whispers, I have been broken, but I am still here. There is an old saying, the wound is the place where the light enters you. And this is precisely the paradox. When you stop resisting pain, when you stop trying to patch it up with false smiles, you open a space for light to pour in. That light is wisdom, empathy, compassion. Such a woman becomes magnetic not because she hides her scars, but because she wears them with grace. Her very vulnerability becomes her strength. A man who loves her does not love a mask, but her whole being, light and shadow together. In relationships, this paradox is especially powerful. Many women believe showing pain will drive people away. But in truth, when shared authentically, pain becomes the bridge of connection. To sit with someone in their sorrow without judgment is to touch the most human part of them. And the paradox is, when you dare to reveal your pain, people feel safer to reveal theirs. Love deepens. Trust grows, because no one wants to love a statue. They want to love a human being. The woman who resists pain often becomes rigid. She pretends, performs, tries to keep everything under control. But this rigidity makes her fragile. One small crack, and she collapses. Conversely, the woman who allows pain to flow through her becomes supple, like bamboo bending in the storm but never breaking. Her wisdom grows not in spite of pain, but because of it. Jung believed that suffering is not a meaningless punishment, but the very soil from which individuation, true selfhood, emerges. When you resist pain, you stay shallow. When you embrace it, you grow roots. And those roots give you a presence that cannot be shaken. That is why the most magnetic women are often those who have suffered yet chosen to rise, not by denying their wounds, but by transforming them into wisdom. So the paradox is clear. The very thing you most wish to avoid becomes your greatest teacher. The night you thought would never end becomes the dawn of your strength. The heartbreak you thought would destroy you becomes the birthplace of self-love. Pain resisted imprisons you, but pain embraced frees you. And once you carry this wisdom, you no longer fear life's storms. You welcome them, knowing that even in the breaking, you are being reshaped into someone deeper, freer, and more whole. The paradox of wholeness. When you stop seeking outside, you finally find yourself. This is the culmination of every paradox before it, the quiet truth waiting beneath all the noise of craving and chasing. From the beginning of time, women have been taught to search outside themselves for validation, for love, for meaning. Society whispers that happiness lies in the perfect partner, the perfect job, the perfect appearance. And so many spend years wandering, seeking pieces of themselves in other people, in achievements, in recognition. But Jung reminded us of a startling truth. Everything you search for outside is already within. And the paradox is, the moment you stop running outward, you discover that you were always whole. I once knew a woman who spent decades searching. She thought happiness would come when she married, but even after marriage, she felt a quiet emptiness. Then she thought it would come when she had children, but the void remained. Later, she turned to her career, pouring herself into success, awards, applause. Yet, when the lights dimmed, silence returned, heavy and unbearable. She told me one day through tears, I kept thinking wholeness was in the next thing, but the more I searched, the further I felt from myself. Her turning point came not from another achievement, but from an evening alone. Sitting in front of a mirror, stripped of makeup, stripped of noise, she whispered to herself, what if everything I'm seeking is already here? That question opened a door she had never dared to walk through. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, happens not when you add more, but when you integrate what already lives within you. Your light and shadow, your joy and pain, your dreams and your fears. Wholeness is not perfection. Wholeness is embracing all of yourself without rejection. The paradox is that you find yourself not by becoming someone else, but by returning to who you already are. In love, this paradox is transformative. A woman who seeks completion in a man will always feel a void. She will cling, demand, and in the end push him away. But a woman who knows she is whole does not enter love to be completed, but to share her fullness. And that is why she becomes irresistible. A man may admire beauty, but what makes him stay is the presence of a woman who does not need him to fill her emptiness. She loves freely, not fearfully. She gives, but never from lack, only from abundance. Wholeness also transforms the way a woman faces life. Instead of seeing every challenge as proof of her inadequacy, she sees it as a mirror reflecting parts of herself she has not yet embraced. Failure is no longer a verdict, but a lesson. Loneliness is no longer a curse, but an invitation to meet her own soul. And the paradox is, once she no longer runs from herself, she finds that she is never truly alone. I often think of the image of the sun. The sun does not beg the earth to revolve around it. It simply shines, and by its very being, planets orbit naturally. A whole woman is like the sun. She does not chase, she does not plead, she radiates. And in her radiance, everything she once sought comes toward her. Love, respect, opportunity, peace. Because when you are whole, you no longer need to chase what you already carry within. Jung once said, who looks outside dreams who looks inside awakens. This is the essence of the final paradox, for as long as you search outside, you are caught in dreams, illusions, endless chasing. But the moment you turn inward, you awaken. You realize the love you craved was first your own. The peace you longed for was waiting in your breath. The meaning you searched for was already woven into your existence. And in that awakening, you stop running, you simply are. And here lies the greatest paradox of all. The moment you no longer need anything, everything comes. When you no longer crave love, you become love. When you no longer chase recognition, you become unforgettable. When you no longer resist pain, you become wisdom. When you no longer deny yourself, you become whole. This is not magic, it is the deepest law of the psyche, one Jung spent his life uncovering. So dear one, if you are weary from searching, let this truth rest in your heart. You do not need to run further, to grasp harder, to chase faster. You only need to return to your breath, to your stillness, to the self you abandoned while chasing the world. There, in that return, you will find what you have been searching for all along, wholeness. And from that wholeness, life itself begins to turn toward you. And so, when we gather these 7 paradoxes and hold them together, we begin to see a map of the soul that is both mysterious and profoundly simple. First, we learn that strength is not in resistance, but in surrender, for only by softening do we touch the deepest layers of our own humanity. Then we discovered that the shadow we fear is not our enemy, but our teacher carrying the keys to freedom. We saw that wounds, far from diminishing us, carve the space for our greatest wisdom. We embraced the truth that loneliness, though it feels like absence, is actually the sacred ground of self-discovery. We realized that the feminine, long dismissed as weakness, is in fact a radiant strength the world desperately needs. We witnessed how love does not bind when it is possessed, but expands when it is released. And finally, we arrived at the greatest paradox of all, that in ceasing to search outside, we return home to ourselves, to a wholeness that was waiting all along. These paradoxes are not intellectual puzzles to be solved, but living truths to be embodied. They invite us to look again at what we call weakness, pain, or emptiness, and see instead the doorway into transformation. They whisper that everything we were taught to avoid, our shadows, our loneliness, our vulnerability, are the very places where the soul does its most beautiful work. And they remind us that nothing outside us can grant the wholeness we crave, because it was planted inside from the very beginning. Think of a seed buried in the dark soil. It may look like nothing is happening, but in that darkness, the seed is splitting, stretching, awakening. Without the weight of soil, without the shadow of night, there could be no blossoming. Our lives are much the same. The paradoxes teach us that the very conditions we resist are the ones that grow us. Struggle becomes strength. Emptiness becomes fullness. Surrender becomes power. Life, it seems, is not against us, but forever nudging us toward becoming more of who we already are. This is why, when we truly embrace these paradoxes, something miraculous begins to happen. We stop fighting life as though it were an enemy. We stop clinging to the illusion that happiness lies somewhere beyond the horizon. Instead, we begin to trust the currents, even when they carry us into unknown waters. We begin to see that every ending holds a hidden beginning. Every tear waters the ground for joy. Every loss uncovers a deeper presence of love. And the paradox, the beautiful paradox, is that the moment we accept what is, life gives us what we once thought impossible. So if you find yourself today in struggle, in loneliness, in the shadow of pain, remember this: you are standing in the very place where the soul begins its sacred alchemy. Do not turn away. Do not harden your heart. Lean closer. Let the paradox work on you. For in its mystery lies your liberation, and in its contradictions lies your wholeness. And perhaps the greatest gift of all is this: when you embody these paradoxes, you do not just transform yourself, you become a mirror for others. You become the person who shows by your presence that surrender is strength, that wounds are wisdom, that wholeness is possible. You become a light that makes others remember their own. And in that way, you join the eternal dance of life, where paradox is not a problem, but the very poetry of existence.